Are you getting forgetful? Maybe have a little foggy brain. Maybe you're just not quite feeling yourself. Well, I have to tell you, since March, as you know, since March of 2024, I've been doing neurofeedback. It's been life-changing for me. But perhaps neurofeedback is just one portion of the puzzle. It's just one piece of the puzzle. Even though I've had life-changing results, maybe there's more to the puzzle that I need to unravel. And when Dr. John Silva and I did, where Dr. John Silva was the headliner for the rewiring the brain with neurofeedback training, I learned even more stuff as far as the brain and what are the other things that can cause the brain to malfunction. So if you think that you are just getting older and this is foggy brain and being forgetful and all of that is a part of growing old, think again. So today we are very lucky here in the classroom because Dr. John Silva, DC, Doctor of Chiropractic Medicine, and a functional neurologist is and what I call him the brain whisperer, is in the classroom today, and we're going to be talking about other things that you can do to detoxify your brain.
And when you need a friend, you can count on me. I'll be right here waiting for you.
Hi, my name is Lillian McDermott, and I am a certified life coach, a certified holistic cancer coach, and the host of the Lillian McDermott radio show Classroom. If this is your first time in the classroom, please know I've been waiting for you. This is a safe place where you can go when you need a friend. It is my commitment to provide natural ways to heal, and it is my mission to make awareness, responsibility, and truth a part of our everyday life. And I hope you, my listening, as well as my viewing friend, will feel empowered to embrace a new truth and live the life of your dreams. Well, as I said earlier, if you think that foggy brain, being forgetful, just not feeling quite yourself is a part of growing old, then think again. Perhaps not only your brain might be needing some rewiring, but it might be needing some detoxification. And so today we have John Silva, DC, Dr. John Silva, my brain whisperer, in the classroom. And today we're going to be talking about how to detoxify your brain. And since it is our sole purpose in life to give and receive love and knowledge, I am grateful that Dr. John Silva is here to do just that. Welcome back in the classroom. You're in the classroom with me today.
Yes.
I think I like this background with you. I think I love having you in the classroom with me. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Of course, it's great to be back.
Yeah, so we really had a great time at the Rewiring the Brain with neurofeedback training, and people can still purchase this. They just need to go on to whenyouneedafriend.com and start your process of paying for the workshop and scheduling time if they want to speak with you as well. So that turned out really well, didn't it?
It did. Yeah, that was a great time. Met some really neat people, and I got to share some information. And feedback we're getting so far is people learned a lot.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely. And they still can. So if you're interested in getting your copy of the class that Dr. Silva did, it was a private class. Just go to whenyouneedafriend.com. You will find it in workshops, and then you can do it yourself, and you can choose what it is that you want to do. I know we had some winners. Everybody was a winner, but they got some free things. But everybody gets a discount, right? When they purchase this, they get the discount to have some testing with you at a lower
an
rate,
evaluation. Yeah,
an
look at brain
evaluation.
function. Yeah,
That's
yeah.
great. So let's go because that was one of the things that you primarily talked about in the rewiring the brain and the importance of detoxification. So let's get started on that and let's talk about, different ways that we kind of hurt our brain to cause for it to become toxins in the brain.
Sure, sure. So first, I always like to start. is we have to look at our body as one unit. So we're going to talk a lot about the brain. However, remember the brain is part of our overall body. So whatever's happening to the brain is happening to the rest of our body, its organs, its systems, and vice versa. Whatever's happening to your heart, your GI system is more than likely happening to your brain. In fact, the brain is the most sensitive in terms of how toxins, stressors influence our brain, our body's physiology. So just consider that. So I use an example, and this is a condition I've helped people with for many years called peripheral neuropathy. It's basically destruction or damage to the peripheral nerves. These are the nerves that extend beyond the spinal cord and go out into the periphery of our body. And common symptoms for people could be numbness and tingling and burning sensations, usually in their feet or their lower extremities, pain. And when it gets severe enough over time, it can start to cause imbalances. People start to have tendency to fall. Point being is, whatever's happening to those peripheral nerves, one of the things I always try to get my patients to understand is if it's happening there in the nerves outside of the central nervous system, the spinal cord and the brain, more than likely it is happening to the nerves in the brain. So just a little basic anatomy. Our brain is comprised of neurons, just the type of cell that exists in our body, in our brain. Neurons are nerve cells, and there's billions of them there, and they are what make up us as a person. It's our brain is responsible for our cognitive functions, our emotional well-being, our behavioral well-being, and it's also command central for every other physiological function in the body. So I'd like to start with some basics. And again, when we talk about brain and body, there's no disconnect. One and the same. So
I
yeah, as
want
we
to I
move
want
forward,
to I want
yeah.
to clarify something, Dr. Silva. You said that peripheral neuropathy
Mhm.
is a sign that something is wrong with the brain. Did I hear that correctly?
It's very likely if you have destruction of your nerves anywhere in your body, peripheral neuropathy is a common diagnosis of that. More than likely, you've got some nerve destruction in your brain. So it's important, despite
Oh,
any symptoms. But when you talk to someone that has peripheral neuropathy, they can usually relate to brain-based symptoms, whether it be something as simple as sleep issues. But most, when you really dive deep, they're having brain fog issues, they're having cognitive issues, perhaps they're having some problems with emotional dysregulation, such as anxiety, panic, depression, or a combination of both of those things.
interesting,
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
I never, because, usually when people have that diagnosis of peripheral neuropathy, they're usually focusing on their feet. They're usually
Mhm.
focusing on their body. I've never heard before. So I just want to highlight this so that if anybody has been diagnosed with this, that you start looking up. You start looking within and within the body a little higher because it's got to start from somewhere. Just like a river, like streams down or streams up, whatever, there's got to be a start. And so if
Mhm.
we're starting at the bottom, maybe we need to look at the top. That's just what I was thinking when you were saying that. I'm like, I've never heard that before, but
Yeah,
go ahead, keep
yeah.
going.
And it's interesting because it kind of matches my career path. I've been in practice for over 20 years now, and as you mentioned, most of my practice has been within the realm of functional medicine with an emphasis on neurology, neurological specific type conditions. And prior to really getting into helping people with brain-based conditions, the
Yeah,
majority of my practice was
yeah.
helping people with peripheral neuropathy. And again,
Wow,
basic understanding of how our neurological system works, it's all interconnected. And so,
wow.
and again, our nerves are very sensitive to toxins, which is today's topic. And I always would stress to people, look, we've got to look at your brain function. And again, when you sit down and have a simple conversation, ask a few questions or use an assessment tool or a questionnaire, these people are suffering with brain fog. They're suffering with fatigue and being tired all the time, can't think clearly, having
Mm-hmm.
sleep issues. And I try to make that connection. This is all part of our nervous system. If it's affecting you in your feet, your
Wow.
brain's being affected. And here's the disconnect. And it all comes back to, again, we're talking multi generations.
Yeah.
Our whole healthcare system is completely disconnected because
Yes.
these people are running around to different practitioners that specialize in different parts of the body, and no one is taking the time to make that connection. And it's a shame because anyone who goes on to become a physician, our basic training or basic education in anatomy and physiology, we know everything's all interconnected.
Yeah.
You can't just look at the heart. You can't, as a cardiologist, you can't just look at the brain as a neurologist. You can't just look at the lungs as a pulmonologist. You got to bring the
Yeah.
whole body together. And
Yeah.
when you start having that conversation, like, oh my gosh, yeah, I'm having all kinds of these things. You can help me with that.
Well,
So my practice has eventually evolved, and I still do help clients with peripheral neuropathy, and much like the brain-based therapies,
uh-huh.
the technologies have advanced where you don't necessarily have to come to my clinic. People can do these home-based peripheral neuropathy therapies from home with my guidance
Wow.
and supervision. But a
Wow.
big part of the treatment plan is looking at toxins, which is today's subject. Yeah.
Well, let's keep on talking about
Yeah.
that because, there is such a thing as toxins building up in the body.
Mhm.
So, what are some of the culprits for that?
Yeah. So toxins, just think of them as a substance that enters the body over the course of our lifetime that causes disruption. Okay, disruption of how our bodies function, and actual tissue destruction. Okay, we're just trying to use generic terms here. Now, how do toxins? I like to look at how toxins enter our body. Okay, they can enter the body through the air that we're breathing. Okay, whether it's in an indoor environment or outdoor environment, it's almost inescapable. And I just want to preface this whole conversation we're going to have today is by the time we're done, you probably might be thinking, oh my gosh, this is gloom and doom. There's some reality to that. It's just the fact is we live in a much more toxic world than we ever did before. That's just part of industry. It's part of where we've come. However, it's important to have the knowledge that we can do some things to keep up with the changing times and overcome the burden that these toxins have put on us. So there's not always gloom and doom, although we're going to talk about it. It seems like, oh my gosh, this is almost inescapable. And the reality it is.
Well, you're
So
going
you
to
step
offer
outside your,
solutions. You're going to offer
yeah,
solutions. So, it can't be
exactly.
gloom and doom when we can be part of the solution too. So, I just wanted to add that, but keep
Yeah,
going.
yeah. So you step outside and you look up in the sky and you see these effects of geoengineering. You see these streaks going across the sky from planes. You are maybe spraying chemicals to keep the weeds off your lawn. Perhaps you're doing some pest control or you have a pest control company. These aerosols go into the air and we are breathing that in. And then, again, I'm just giving you one of many, many examples. Okay. So air comes through our ability to breathe. Next is water or any beverage that we're drinking. Okay, so important to make sure that we're testing our water supply, where we're getting our water from, whether it's at home, in our office or workplace environment, to make sure that we are filtering that water to some extent. And again, that could be a whole other subject of topic. And this is part of what I offer also, because you start looking at just these little things and you've got to pay attention to how these toxins are coming into our body. So it's important to look at filtration. And I've gone down this path on all these different levels, looking at air, looking at water for myself, my family, and I pass this information on to my clients and patients. And again, it can be a little daunting and overwhelming sometimes, but one of the things that I've tried to do over the years, personally and for my household, is to try to take all these complex concepts and all the complexity of looking at water filtration, for instance. I mean, there's a plethora of different water filtration systems out there that cost just a few dollars up to thousands of dollars. I like to try to say, all right, what is known to work? What's the most cost effective and accessible to most of us? Okay. And I've been down that path on both extremes. I want, all right, cheap water filter and something that costs several $1,000s. And when you really do the research, it's like, all right, where's that middle ground that most of us can't afford to do and is simple for us to implement? But it's important that we look at our water, okay? Because if you look at most water municipalities and anywhere in the country, the water is terrible when you have it tested. I live in a county in Florida, south of where you live, called St. Lucie County. Our water is terrible here,
Yeah.
terrible.
Yeah.
In fact, I'll never forget when we bought our first house here in 2001, as part of the closing, and this is an interesting thing, it sticks in my mind because we had my son Ethan with us. He was just born the week prior, and here we are
Oh,
closing on our new house. He's in his he's in his little car seat thing that we took into the closing agent's office. And there was a addendum to all the paperwork we had to sign. And once we bought a house before, even a car, there's all kinds of paperwork.
yes.
And this one struck me as odd. It alerted me, but it was basically something to the effect, I don't remember exactly, that we're acknowledging that St. Lucie County, particularly Port St. Lucie, the town that I live in, has had a higher increase of childhood cancers, potentially from our
Wow.
groundwater.
Wow.
We do also have a nuclear power plant here. I don't think there's anything emitted from that, but it just struck me as interesting that they had you sign basically an acknowledgement of that, disclosing that fact that they've known this for years. I'm like, this is frightening. Here I am, our first child, and we're about to raise our son in this environment. So that really, in fact, that was kind of one of the big impetus for me to really start looking into toxins. And ever since then,
Yeah,
it's
but it's
been an
not
ongoing
only
journey.
it's not only the drinking of the water, you're bathing in this water and the skin absorbs everything within 26 seconds. It goes into the bloodstream. So not to scare people. I mean, we have a dechlorinator on our shower. All our water is filtered water, but our drinking water is reverse osmosis. Is that something what did you decide to do on your home?
Reverse osmosis with some basic carbon filtration, and we even have a filter that adds alkalinity back into the water. People may have heard the concept of buying these expensive waters or alkaline generators. You can get a simple filter that essentially does the same thing after it's
Hmm.
gone through reverse osmosis and adds some of the minerals back in that are taken out with
Yeah,
reverse
yeah,
osmosis. So
yeah.
again, it's a whole process, and it seems complex, but the great thing is, as technology advances, these filtration systems,
Very
these
affordable.
become more affordable. And
Yes,
that's again
yes.
try to what I do to help my clients. It's understanding that hey, we may have a burden of toxins, and we need to look at all right, what can we do to minimize our exposure as we're trying to eliminate these from our body. So you mentioned skin. Again, skin is the largest organ in our entire body. It's how we absorb a lot of our toxins. And again, that alone, we can probably talk for an hour. Um, Common sources of skin toxicity and how it enters our skin is cosmetics, lotions, HBA products, the shampoos. Even though we're only putting it on momentarily and it rinses off, there still is, as you
Yeah,
mentioned, within a few seconds,
yeah,
it's absorbing into our skin. Where does it go from the skin? It goes into our bloodstream, circulated through our body, and then it goes into the cells. So I mentioned the analogy of how our brain is comprised of billions of neurons or nerve cells. Our whole body is comprised of trillions of cells.
yeah.
And this seems so elemental, but again, we tend to lose this in healthcare. And our basic training is we have to look at the health of our individual cells to understand our overall health and our problems with chronic disease and as it relates to toxicity. So when we start to dive deep and look at the actual cell and understand that perspective, now we can really help people to overcome their chronic health challenges, whether it's brain-based, body-based, or a combination of both. So I just want to touch on that. We're going to get back to that in just a moment. As these toxins enter the body, again, through breathing, through drinking, through our skin, they eventually work their way into the bloodstream. We continue to follow that path, and then they end up in the cells, and that's where they wreak their damage, and they wreak their havoc and do their damage, so to speak. So yeah, those are just a number of different ways that they get into our body. Now, also from digestion. So what does that mean? What we're putting into our mouth, our dietary habits. What are we eating? Okay. Again, we can talk for hours on that. I try to keep it simple, but I can share with you probably the most toxic food that we can consume are foods that are, how should I say, manufactured from crops that are heavily inundated with insecticides and pesticides. Okay. And of those insecticide pesticides, there's a specific type of what they call organophosphate called glyphosate. Okay, you can do a bit of research on this. And unfortunately, worldwide, but especially in our country, because of poor regulatory control and lobbying power, these glyphosates are inundating our food supply. Okay, so by simply eating a meal, eating a snack, our children, ourselves, we're taking in these glyphosates, and they're very, very, very damaging. Okay, so important to understand this. So how do we avoid this? Because again, first thing is understanding where our toxins come from, how they enter our body, but you need to start at least significantly reducing how they get into our body.
Yeah.
So just looking at dietary habits. And
Yeah.
one of the first places I tell people to start is start seeking those food products, one that are as close to nature as possible. So
Hmm.
try to stick with food products that are in their raw form. They're not overly processed. I tell people if it comes from a box or can, it's been processed in some form of fashion and more than likely has some toxic additives or this glyphosate.
Yeah.
But to
And
take it a step beyond that is look at the organic. Make
yeah.
sure it's certified organic. You have less likely chance of having these organophosphates or this glyphosate in your food products.
And I want to add to what you just said because a lot of people don't even look at that. They go, "Oh, I eat it all the time. I'm fine." But there is an image that I always have when it comes to my body or when it comes to just about anything in life. It's a cup, an empty cup that is right underneath a faucet, a drip, just a tiny little drop at a time. Eventually, that drop that runs the cup over, that's what we don't know when that's going to be. We don't know how empty our cup is. We don't know how what we're doing today. We know it's going to affect us 20 years from now. So that drop just, we don't even notice that drop. Some people
Mm-hmm.
do. Like someone like me, I'm the canary in the coal mine. I'm the one that feels things right away because my cup is kind of empty, so to speak, so that I feel that drop. I feel that
Mm-hmm.
drop, maybe not at first, but the next day or the next week, and you can't trace it. That's the crime. You cannot trace it. As you know, I just got back from a cruise, just recently, and it was heartbreaking to see the morbidly obese children. So even as a child, their cup is full, is almost full. And what's that going to do for their generation? It was heartbreaking for me to see. I had to kind of eat in different places so that I would just enjoy what I was doing. But I was getting special meals prepared for me because I have so many food allergies.
Mm-hmm.
But the children that were eating, and then of course you look at their parents, and their parents are already there, but their children are starting becoming morbidly obese. They had scars on their face, redness, blotchiness, like scabs on their face from, it looks like they fell, but it's probably psoriasis or something, dryness of the skin. It's, we need to wake up because that little drop once does not make a difference. But that little drop, 20 years of dropping in your cup, it's going to overflow it. And then that's when people say, how did I get cancer? Or cancer, I got cancer, instead of saying that drop caused that
Yep.
disease, that accumulation of the drops. But keep going. I just had
No,
to
no,
mention
we're on
that.
the same frequency band today. I mean, I was going to bring up what I call, and again, similar to your cup analogy, the bucket analogy.
Okay.
So I like to use a term called bioaccumulation. We
Mhm.
bioaccumulate these toxins practically since infancy, even beyond that. In fact, we're learning now that a lot of mom's toxins can be passed through the placenta onto their unborn child. So we have children now in this new generation of children who are born already having this toxic burden. Their bucket is already partially full. And as you mentioned, you through dietary habits, through exposure, through again, stuff in the ear, the water, all these products that we put on our skin, put on our children's skin, we keep adding more and more drops to the bucket. And you get to a point in your life, and I'm seeing more and more children, and we're talking as young as 1, 2 years old, their bucket's already full. And once that thing starts to drip off the sides, that's when we start to have the symptoms. And again, traditional approach is to go see our doctor, the specialist that specializes, for instance, in dermatological issues. My child has a rash. Okay, it's eczema, it's or some type of skin rash. Here's a topical. And the crazy thing is, some of these topicals are adding to the problem. They have, yes, they're helping to relieve the symptoms, not getting to the root cause, which are the toxins inside the body and the skin, but they're adding to the toxic burden. It's just this crazy. Anyway, we can go on for a long time, but
Don't get me
children.
started.
So the bucket analogy. So think about that. Throughout our lifetime, we are bioaccumulating these toxins. It's so vitally important to understand that no matter what the named chronic disease that you have been diagnosed with, that you feel you may have, or the symptoms behind that chronic disease, it is for certain that toxic burden is behind that. Just one of the many things that's behind that. And you need to address that if you have any chance of overcoming or at least relieving the symptoms of that chronic disease. That's just plain and simple. I mean, anyone who does not understand that in this day and age, especially within the healthcare professions, it's a shame that we're not looking at that. We should have been looking at this a long time ago. And interesting that we're on the same wavelength this morning talking about children. And it's a shame to see. I mean, I go out in public places and to see these unhealthy children. And a big part of my practice over the years is helping many children with autism, ADD, ADHD. I'm seeing kids now as young as their preteens having all kinds of emotional dysregulatory problems, suicidal tendencies, depression, really deep depression. It is so sad. So part of what I wanted to do today was provide anyone a resource. If you have not heard of course, most people have heard of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. in this day and
Oh
age,
yeah.
especially in the political arena.
Oh yeah.
But he has a wonderful resource called Children's Health Defense Network, or children'shealthdefense.org is his website. Highly recommend. Go to the website, submit your basic information, name and email to get on his weekly emails and explore the website. He has several different downloadable ebooks that you can get by subscribing to the website, a plethora of information, links to documentary videos that he has been contributed to or has been part of. But I have in front of my screen right now, as we're doing this call, one of his ebooks, which is called The Sickest Generation.
Yeah.
In the last 10 to 20 years, and this is but my span of practice, I started practicing, like I said, a little over 20 years ago. I am seeing more and more sick children. And I'm just going to read a couple statistics right from this book. In fact, there's even a little video you can play, which is an introduction to this book. Again, this is a downloadable ebook. And if anyone that has children or grandchildren, you need to look at this website. First, I've been following the work of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. for a long time. And to see him now, and not to get into the political arena, but to see him joining forces and to see where we're going to be taking our country, and they're coming up with a new slogan, MAHA, Make America Healthy Again. And the emphasis is on this generation, our kids, our teens. They are some of the sickest, they are the sickest generation, unfortunately. But anyway, statistically, in 2011, 54% of children had at least one of 20 chronic health conditions. Now, keep in mind, that was 13 years ago. This statistic, I'm sure, is a lot worse. Back when I started practicing, 1 in every 34 children would be diagnosed with some type of neurodevelopmental delay or disorder that would be in the realm of autism. Autism is kind of a broad spectrum, captures a lot of different cognitive, emotional, behavioral problems in the brain of children, but nonetheless, 1 in 34. That statistic, as of next year, 2025, is now 1 in 2 children has some type of neurological brain-based disorder. It could be something as just having problems with focus and attention in school, being disruptive, maybe hyperactivity, impulsivity, to more significant where they have autism and they have a
Yeah.
number of cognitive, emotional, social, behavioral problems.
And most people will say, not most, but the people who defend the fact that these diagnoses were not being made back then, they're saying, oh, they're now getting more detailed and all that. And I'm thinking, yeah, no, I don't think that is it. I don't think that's it. And if children back then, when I was a kid, I probably would have been given medication for ADHD. I could have been given medication. I wasn't hyperactive, but I did, or ADD, but I did have some issues with developmentally, understanding and I'm sure that there were other factors for me because I'm empathic and perhaps maybe I'm trying to mix all of that together. But
Uh-huh.
when you see the children today, you've got to ask why. Why, when I started the show back in 2011, the statistic was 1 in 10,000 children get autism. Now it's like 1 in 20, 1 in 23, 1 in 27. It's pretty sad the way that it's going, and nobody is asking why. And along with John F. Kennedy Jr., that's his name,
Robert,
right? Robert,
Kennedy.
sorry, Robert Kennedy Jr. He is now connected with the ICANN, which is the work of Del Bigtree, who's been in the classroom many, many times. And they're now going after some of the shots that they're giving
Yes.
newborns that don't need to be given because they're not going to be going to a bar the next day to have sexual relations. So they're now going and they're going to stop it because they're doing these shots without parents' consent. And so ICANN is going after them. So this is just a hope glimmer for the future. Hopefully they will win. So I hope that people donate to ICANN as well, which is informed
Yeah.
consent action. But I don't know but it's amazing what people are doing while we are sleeping, while we are
Yes.
asleep. Yeah, but go ahead, keep going, keep going.
Yeah, so yeah, definitely take a look at his work and been following him for a long time, and we've got some good things coming our way. But the fact is, we've been dealing with this stuff. We need to address it on a personal level. We need to take care of our kids and grandchildren. So important. I'm going to read one more statistic. There's a study that, again, this is from that book, 2001 to 2004, found that half of kids ages 13 to 18 have been diagnosed with at least one mental, emotional, and or behavioral disorder. Think about that. And again, this is when I was starting my practice back in 2001. So I'm sure statistically this has changed drastically. And again, I'm seeing evidence of that now. Seeing more and more kids with vast, numerous diagnoses on many medications. It's just yeah, it's crazy. But there is hope. And the great thing about a child's body is they have the ability to recover quickly, as long as they haven't gone down that slippery slope, or they're not dealing with a genetic condition, which is a small percentage of the population. But kids bounce back really quick, and that's been my experience. So, but we need to understand this. So,
This little section of what Dr. Silva was talking about of childhood issues and the choices that we do for our health will be taken off, or was taken off. But if you want to see the show in its entirety, you go to BitChute. So there's going to be a chunk missing prior to this, and then you can watch what he said on BitChute. So go to BitChute and make sure that you like and follow me there. I just want to make sure that this video that is important for Dr. Silva with the work that he's doing doesn't get eliminated. What I want you to know is go to whenyouneedafriend.com. While you're there, please subscribe, like, and follow me on social media. Make sure you share this video. You may want to just stop the video here and just go back to where you left off and go to BitChute and fast forward so you can hear the really important information when we're talking about children and adults and the toxic overload that some of these choices that are done for the right reasons. We trust our providers, we trust the people, practitioners, and we make these decisions, but we don't know what could happen. So if you want to listen to the whole thing, go to BitChute. I want to also encourage you to go to the class that we did with Dr. Silva. You can go to the workshop area and see if you want to look at how to rewire your brain. Some of the things that you can do to detoxify your body. It's as important today as it was back then when we did it. So we're going to continue offering this as a solution for everybody to watch. And Dr. Silva has some great discounts for people who choose to continue with a neurofeedback or do the work with him. I encourage you to look into it as well. And so as a sponsor, please support our sponsors, like the way that they are supporting the classroom. Make sure that you go to my Shop Now bag. In my Shop Now bag, you can get Lilly approved items from head to toe. And last but not least, you can become an enrolled student in the classroom, whether it's $1 or $1,000 a month or a one-time donation. Everything is necessary. Sharing this video and telling them to go to BitChute to watch the entire video is important as well. So I want to encourage you to do whatever it takes to spread the word, to be a part of the solution. by growing the classroom. Dr. Silva, all his information for Dr. Silva is here in both in his where and he's joining me in the classroom and my information here. You have two areas where you can look, where you can find his information. You can find him at drjohnsilva.com. You can send emails at info@drjohnsilva.com. If you have any questions for me about Dr. Silva, I am more than happy to answer. You can text me at 407-373-5959. All the information that is being shared here today, Dr. Silva's not your doctor. He's offering you solutions. If you want for him to be your doctor, you're welcome to reach out to him at 772-494-2576. That's 772-494-2576. I am so grateful to you, Dr. Silva, for always coming on the show in the classroom and sharing your wisdom. This is information that, so far we've talked about how to detoxify the brain with air being the culprit, water, and what the solutions are for that, and food, the diet and nutrition. So we also talked about some of the things that we choose, which was eliminated. You can find it on BitChute, and that way they can see that some of the choices that we're making because we are fearful of whatever bug or bacteria is out there, that we make these choices that do affect our life. So, with that in mind, what are some of the things like I know when you talked about food, sugar, and a poor diet, and which I saw a lot of it when I was on my cruise.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really difficult. Any other tips that you can offer that are things that we can ourselves mitigate?
Oh yeah. Yeah, food again, big source, especially for kids. So just again, start paying attention to product labels. If you see a list of chemicals that you have tough time pronouncing or understanding what they are, more than likely it's probably toxic. Okay. Again, the more we can shop in the periphery of our stores, which is typically our meats, our eggs, our fresh fruits and vegetables, the better off you are. Once you start going down those center aisles, that's where you have more of your processed toxic foods. However, for instance, for us down here in the Southeast Florida, we have public supermarkets, and I'm sure most supermarkets around the country are probably doing this. But as you go down those aisles, they have little bump out sections that they label as their non-GMO organic sections. So try to stay in those sections if you're going to get something that's processed. So just little simple points like that can be really helpful. But especially we have to monitor our kids and try to educate kids because it's tough. I mean, they're going to birthday parties. They're hanging out with their friends after a sporting event and whatever have you. And unless they have the knowledge, they're going to eat what everyone else is eating. And unfortunately, it's not very healthy. But that is a big exposure as our foods. Um, Even supplements. As we're trying to take supplements that are healthy for our body, we think we're doing something well. If we're buying these supplements that are mass produced from our big box stores, and we stop and look at the ingredients, sometimes the fillers or the additives that they add to the supplement are toxic in of themselves. So here we are trying to put good nutrients into our body, but yet it's a toxic product. So again, we can talk for hours on this, but I like to start with some of the basics. So what happens, and let's kind of dive in because I'm sure people want to know how do we address this? How do we do some detoxification? So again, one is the understanding that we all bioaccumulate these toxins over a lifetime. They enter our body through, as we talked about, skin, breathing, digestion, and once in the body, they circulate and they end up in the cell. And this is a very important part because I've had a lot of people that I've worked with. Oh, I've done a detox or I've done a cleanse. I've done a 3 day, a 5 day. These are all well and good. However, most of those cleanses, the 3 day, the 5 day cleanses, they're kind of limited in a sense that they only will detox or cleanse, so to speak, what I call the downstream pathways of detoxification, which means the lymphatic system, the circulatory system, the liver, the kidneys, and the GI system, which is great. You need to do that, and it's important to do that from time to time. However, if we really want to get to the toxins that are bound up in our cells, again, our life is that we live our life through our cells. We've got to look at it from the cellular level. So I've done a lot of postgraduate training and I've helped numerous people through what we call cellular detoxification. So we do address the downstream pathways. In fact, this is a phasic approach. We take a couple of months moving people through phases of detoxification. And the first month is about just helping to get the downstream pathways of detox in a healthier state. So using some combination of nutrient supplements, some herbs, perhaps some therapies to get the liver and the kidneys, your primary detox organs, in a better functioning state. It's important because if they're not functioning very well, you're not going to do very good at detoxifying these chemicals and these toxins from your body, making sure the colon, the GI system is properly functioning, the lymphatic system, you have good circulation. So that first month is, for some people, 2 months, is just prepping the body for the next phase, which is usually months 2, 3, or beyond, where we start to add nutrient supplements, specific combination of supplements that are able to get through the cell membrane. So our cell, think of it as a balloon. The balloon, it has this membrane that traps the air, or if you're making a water balloon, has water inside of it, and that's where all of the action of our health takes place, is inside the cell. But that membrane, the balloon material itself, using that as an analogy, is the vital part. That's how toxins enter the cell and disrupt our function. And it's also how our cells have its own detox mechanisms. And if our cells are broken down and not function properly, we can't eliminate those toxins that have bound up in the cells back through that membrane to go into the circulatory system and be eliminated by the body. So we have to look at this from a cellular perspective. And again, this has been an evolving journey in my own personal experience, because when I first started practicing, I realized the importance of toxins. And like anything I bring in my practice, I like to tinker with things. I like to do things for myself because I want to experience what I'm going to suggest or recommend for my patients or clients to do. So I've done all kinds of herbal cleanses and supposed detoxes, but it wasn't until I started really getting into the postgraduate training over the years that I'm like, oh wow, I was missing a big part of this picture. I was completely missing what's bound up in my cells, and a specific type of toxins like heavy metals. We're talking things like aluminum, mercury, arsenic. These are the kinds of toxins that easily pass through the cell membrane and wreak a lot of havoc on our cell function, can affect our genetics or our expression of our genetics, called epigenetics. But these are the toxins that have the most profound effects. And it wasn't until I learned this that, hey, we need to eliminate these things. And this is not something you can just do in 3 days or 5 days with a cleanse. It's an ongoing process. And of course, part of that is dependent on how bad your toxic burden is. So coming back to this, that's an important part of this. So I call it cellular detoxification or true cellular detoxification. And it's not hard to do. It's just a matter of combination of supplements. But again, the important part of this is addressing and minimizing your exposure, stopping your exposure whenever we can, is also an important part of this. So part of what I do is not only provide the resources, but educate people. All right, well, let's look at your home environment. Let's look at your air quality. What can we be doing to take care of your air quality?
Yeah.
In fact, speaking of which we didn't even touch on, again, this could be a whole nother topic. I keep talking about these other topics in other classes. Perhaps this could be another class. Mycotoxins,
Mhm.
okay? And again, it wasn't until my own personal experience in my own household that I realized how bad these things are. In fact, I rank them up there now with heavy metals.
Yeah.
So what are mycotoxins? Mycotoxins come from mold exposure. And sometimes you may not even recognize or see or sense the mold, but it's there nonetheless.
Yeah.
And especially prevalent for us in these warm, humid environments like in Florida, Texas, and other southeastern states. Mold is so toxic. And it's not necessarily the mold. It's not like we have a moldy body. What happens is mold, and there's different species of mold. These are living organisms. They produce these spores that circulate through our household, land on all of our materials, on our clothing. We take them in through our skin, through our breath, and they become toxic at the cellular level. So toxic, like I said, right on par with heavy metals. For people who have ever researched this before, we know mercury, aluminum, arsenic, especially for the brain, are have a very toxic effect, very bad physiological effect. But as I've come to learn over the years, mold ranks right up there. It literally can drive people crazy. So it's important to understand that. So if you've ever had an exposure or you think you may have an exposure to mold, really important to look into that. So taking this a step further, there are tests that can measure for virtually every toxin that we've come to know. And I do offer this testing to all my clients. The neat thing about how these therapies, technologies, these tests have evolved is much of the testing that I do now, and I use some of the best reputable labs in the country. You can actually order a test kit online, inexpensive. They ship directly to your door, and either through a urine sample, a hair sample, and if we do need any blood, you don't need to go to a LabCorp Quest and have a blood draw. You can simply do a finger poke, especially helpful for people that are squeamish with blood or kids. And through those samples, those bodily samples, we can actually assess for things like heavy metals, mycotoxins that come from mold, and the plethora of other what I call inorganic and organic toxins. So stuff that comes from, again, the materials in our household, the food additives, the organophosphates like glyphosate. In fact, there's a new combination of testing that I'm now using that before is in all these individual tests. Now I have one test kit that measures for all of those things. And it is amazing that we've started ordering this test. And it is quite alarming to me because typically we would just pick and choose a couple of these things based on a person's exposure or suspected exposure. But now for those that have the resources, and it's not that expensive, we do the full comprehensive test. And it's amazing how you're able to see all of this. So testing is very vitally important. We know what we're dealing with. All right, how much toxic burden do we have? What toxins are we working with? So we know what to do in the detox process. Now, for those that may not have the resources, I tell people, we can order the test, or we can assume as if. And again, for most of us these days, we have some level of toxic
Yeah.
burden.
Act as
It
if.
can't
Yeah.
hurt. Yeah,
Yeah.
it can't hurt to
Yeah.
detoxify. Okay. So I just wanted to bring that into the mix in our conversation today. But the detoxification process is such an important part, and this works for children, infants, right on through seniors. And of course, we use the doses and we use the certain nutrient supplements depending on body size and body weight and whether it's a child or an adult. And that's why it's important to do this with someone who knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
And the process I use too, because sometimes when people think detox, they're thinking detox from acute exposure. Someone who has had an acute exposure, like a single exposure to like a heavy metal, where they end up in the hospital and they're put on life support and they need to detox these things from their body. They use what are called chelating agents, and they have to be monitored very closely. They have to be dosed very appropriately because you can push that person into cardiac arrest or a number of other problems. The type of detox that I do is using some of these same agents, chelating agents as we call them, binders, but very small doses over a long extended period of time.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
we don't have to worry about these detox reactions, or they're minimized to a great extent.
Yeah.
Um, and I help people through this journey. So if we start to see what are called Herxheimer reactions or detox reactions, we will then cycle their binders or chelating agents or detox supplements, or we'll take a couple of days off or a week off, let their body catch up, and then we resume. And I tell people, when you're experiencing these detox reactions, they could be something like headaches. Common thing is skin rashes. I tell people, that's a good sign. Your body's finally having this ability to work these toxins from the cell through the circulatory system, and your skin is one of the biggest detox organs. It's finally coming through. Yeah, you're going to deal with that skin irritation for a little while, but let's slow the detox process down and then let the body catch back up.
Yeah,
So
this is fascinating information. Things that we can do ourselves that we don't even know. And it's wonderful that you could do it with you. We also have the M Cube detox experience that we did with Dr. Lee Cowden. And one of the things that he said, I just want to add to what you're saying, is he uses a tub. And he says if the tub is full of mud, and you have everything closed up, like the stopper is in, and you start filling it up with water, clean water, because that's what we think we do. We just clean up our act and everything's going to be good. No, what we're going to get is muddy water. So we need to release some of the mud by unclogging the stopper, and so we can let that. So eventually that will get clean. So what is an average when people work with you? What is the average where people can get, at that cellular level, get
Mhm.
to that place where they feel, okay, now my cup is empty again?
Yeah. 3 to 6 months. And again, depending on their toxic burden, especially if we have laboratory tests to show us evidence of how much toxic burden they have. And
Mhm.
like, for instance, heavy metals are a little bit more challenging and they take longer to detox from the body. And again, depending on, and the neat thing about the lab test is you're not able to identify what you have in your body, but to what extent. There's actually
Yeah.
quantifiable measures on
Wow.
these things.
Yeah.
So we know what we're working with and we can get a good estimation of how long this will take. But I can tell you, usually by the time we get into phase 2, phase 3, which is month 2, month 3, people are already noticing the positive benefit in their health. That's the great thing is you don't have to wait that long. But
Mm.
again, for some people, it takes that long to really have the best chance of eliminating this from their body. And we'll take this one step further. And this is just my own personal journey. And I encourage people to do this. Every year, I go through this multi-phase approach just from a wellness perspective, because again, I'm still exposed, even though I've taken
Mhm.
the time to mitigate and minimize my exposure in my household environment, when I step outside, my office environment, I still have exposure. It's just the reality of our world. So I do this on an annual basis, and tell you what, it makes a huge difference. Huge difference.
Well, I
So
think, yes, I think this is valuable information. Valuable information. And we're just dipping the toe. We're just dipping the toe here because there is so much more that we could talk about, which is lack of sleep and stress and different ways that we can add that to our toxic load in our brain, that we need to detoxify as well. But I really appreciate the start of this conversation. Like you said, more to follow. We're going to continue this conversation. Once again, you can find Dr. John Silva at Dr. Silva, Dr. John Silva at .com, drjohnsilva.com. And you can find him at 433 Northwest Prima Vista Boulevard, Port St. Lucie, Florida. And it's a great place to be. But you can just call him. You can call him at 772-494-2576. Whatever it is that you need, whether you need to talk to me about my experience and what I've gone with Dr. Silva, so that you know that you've got a referral from me, you can also just reach out to him. But I am just so grateful to you, Dr. Silva. You really care. You really care. I could tell that from the moment I met you 12 years ago. And I'm so glad that we've reconnected so that we can help even more people together. So thank you so much for that.
you're welcome, Lily, and I hopefully everyone audience got at least one bit of information out of this. And again, brain is the most sensitive to these toxins, so consider that, especially for those that might be struggling with brain-based conditions
Yes,
or
and
symptoms. Yeah.
once again, there's a chunk of this video that was removed, and you can watch the entire video um, on BitChute. I just want to make sure that the majority of the video is heard, but if you want to hear the main culprits for children and adults getting a foggy brain, detoxification, cancer, and all these other problems that are happening in the body, go check it out at BitChute. The link will be below, so you don't even have to search for it. So go look at the description and click the link where the entire class is in. So thank you once again, Dr. Silva. You're the best. I really absolutely adore you. And I want to thank you all for your trust and tuning in today with your pencil and paper and taking lots of notes. And please remember, we'll be right here waiting for you worldwide at whenyouneedafriend.com. This is Lillian McDermott and Dr. John Silva wishing you love, peace, joy, and unexpected abundance. Make it the best day
Ever.
ever. Good job. Good job. That ever is getting even better ever.
The opinions and advice expressed on the Lillian McDermott radio show are intended for the individual callers and guests on the program and are presented to our wider audience solely for general educational purposes. Please act responsibly and consult personally with your own medical, psychological, or nutritional expert before taking any steps to improve your life.